welcome to the Tonearm, where we connect you with the people and ideas moving culture forward. I'm your host, Lawrence Purrier. Cellist and composer Tomeka Reid has spent the last decade building one of the most distinctive voices in creative music, and we're putting the Tonearm's needle on her today. The New York Times called her a new jazz power source. She's a MacArthur Fellow, a founder of the Chicago Jazz String Summit, and a key collaborator with Anthony Braxton, Roscoe Mitchell, and Craig Taborn, amongst many others. Her quartet, with guitarist Mary Halvorson, bassist Jason Roebke, and drummer Tomas Fujiwara, just released Dance, Skip, Hop on Out of Your Head Records. It's their fourth album together, and it shows what 12 years of shared language sounds like: tight, playful, and willing to take chances. She also appears on Dream Archives, Craig Taborn's AACM debut with this instrumentation, recorded in New Haven, Connecticut, and out earlier this year. We talked about the cello's role in jazz, how family history shapes her work, and what it means to lead a band that's been together long enough to surprise itself. Coming up, Tomeka Reid. I've been enjoying the new record very much. It's been on repeat a lot of the last few days. I wanted to start maybe by asking you about the evolution of the compositions. If I've read the material correctly, maybe you didn't set out with the intention of making songs that were so suitable for dancing, but you realized after the composition that they were very danceable. Am I in the right neighborhood with that?
Yeah, I always try to give myself some kind of prompt or just idea to work with, just to thinking I think oftentimes people think of the cello as long sustained lines or things like that. So I wanted to kind of inhabit a different kind of space, and I like to dance. So it's I wanted to kind of I wanted some of that energy to be in there. I didn't know specifically how that was going to happen, but that was just something that was kind of floating around in my mind. But then once compositions kind of came into being, then I was oh yeah. For me, it was I was enjoying bouncing around to the ideas I was coming up with. So yeah.
In one very sort of limited viewing of the cello, it may not come across as an instrument that involves a lot of bodily movement, although it obviously is a physical machine. I'm curious about the relationship between body and the instrument, the ability to express yourself through movement and physicality. How much of that do you think about? How much of that do you take away? How much is that part of your experience with your instrument?
I guess it's a big part of it. I mean, I feel like cello players often have troubles with their backs and shoulders and necks just because of the nature of carrying the instrument, especially when you're on tour and cases, just hauling it around. And then, yeah, you want to make sure that you have good posture when you're playing. That's what you're, told. But then, I find myself, sometimes I look at pictures, I'm oh, because I'm engaged in listening to what's happening around me, because I'm improvising, sometimes, I will curve over a little bit more than maybe is good for my neck or shoulders later. So it is a very physical instrument. And I think the older I get, I just realize how we're all kind of musical athletes. And I wish that some of that was addressed earlier in our training. Maybe some teachers get that, but yeah, we're using all these small muscles, really intensively from when we're very young, depending on when we start playing. But in any case, you're using these really small muscles. And yeah, I mean, I guess I do think about my body and just especially because that's how I get sound. It's using, my relaxed shoulders and relaxed arms to pull the sound out instead of pressing the sound out. And then just how you need to have strong back muscles and things like that, because you have these little muscles that you're working with. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I do think about those things when I'm playing and how to play with the most relaxed body, less tension. But then again, when you're improvising, sometimes that kind of goes out the window because you're I'm just trying to grab that idea or trying to make that sound or whatever. So then you might do something that's quote unquote not celloistic. I don't know if that's a word, but you might do something that maybe is not in the best form because you're trying to accomplish that sound or idea you might have in your mind.
Do you have to train or maintain your body in specific ways as a cellist? Are you aware of that? Has it evolved as you've gotten older in life? Or what is there a physical practice related to your life outside of just sitting at the cello?
Yes, I try, but it's just hard to have the discipline when you're touring. But yes, stretching, I say to all musicians, stretching is so important because I think our bodies just kind of lose some kind of elasticity. So it's just good to just stretch. So I do carry around like rubber bands to stretch. I know horn players that have like, those kind of like finger grippy things that you can squeeze just to keep the fingers strengthened. Because it's funny, because I always thought that, oh, well, I'm hauling this cello around and I'm playing like, clearly I must have some upper body strength, but no, I could stand to do more. So when I do have time, I try to like stretch and go to the gym. Yeah.
Given that Dance Skip Hop, the fourth record with this quartet, I wonder if what you're able to ask of the band members is different than what you were able to ask or expect of them in 2015.
I think it's not so much that, it's more like maybe I know what to ask more just because I have more experience, or I know what I liked or sounds I liked. But now I can be more specific or more intentional or clear in expressing that. Whereas, I was just a younger band leader and I'm just, at that point you're like, oh my gosh, for me, I'm over here, so I have a band. I have people that are willing to play my music. And so you're happy with that. And just like, yeah, but then maybe there's things that you want to tweak. And so you try to like, I feel like for myself, like I said, I try to give myself a prompt, or I want to improve each time in my own playing, or maybe how I think about touring. I try to figure out how can I make it even more comfortable each time, because we are getting older, and while we do get to go really awesome places, it's not an easy job. So I'm always trying to figure out how I can do something better. So I think I would say, I think we're all growing in our crafts or what we do, but I think maybe it's also that I'm able to like be more clear in like, that's not exactly the sound I want, or that's not exactly the groove I want. How do I can express that maybe a little bit clearer now that I just have more experience playing in bands and just playing bands, playing my music, and just developing more clearer language around that.
When you are beginning a new set of compositions, are you sitting down to compose for this quartet, or is it like, is it project based? You're writing for those voices, or is it just you have these compositions, now you have the opportunity to make a record, you go through your repertoire and here are the ones? Like, what's that process like?
Yeah, I'm definitely thinking about my bandmates. In any project, I'm always thinking about my bandmates. I'm really sensitive to like, for example, I feel like early on, especially, I wrote a lot of like ostinatos, or like I love vamps. So yeah, so I feel like I've tried to like figure out how to stretch things, because it's like I don't want anyone to get bored, I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. And so I'm also trying to figure out how to shift roles in that way too, so that, maybe there's an instance where I can be the bass player and Jason can play an arco melody, or he can do another type of figure, or I can play a guitar figure, or like a arpeggiated type of thing, and so then Mary can do something different. So I'm always trying to figure out how to shift roles within the ensemble as much as possible. Maybe Toma's a little bit more fixed as far as providing groove, but I try to give these other comping groove figures to everyone, so that we're all kind of being drummers in the ensemble.
Yeah.
I have some ideas about what I do want to do for the next record in regards to Toma, just giving him, he gets some melody, that he'll accent some of the melody, but maybe there's something more I can do even with that, so that we're really trying to shift all the roles. But yeah, they're just such great players. So it's like, I want to create something that's interesting and engaging, because yeah, if we go on tour, we're going to be playing this material night after night. So I want to create, to the best of my ability, music that can open up. Of course, I like hearing what I wrote, but then that it can go places, and that it's not too fixed, that it can have space to like go other places. But yeah, I definitely think about them settings to like, you want everyone to shine.
Yeah.
And I love them. They're like really great musicians and people. So it's like, I want to create something that makes everyone shine in some way.
Yeah. There's a few things you said in there I wanted to double click on. One was you mentioned that notion of the shifting roles. It's interesting to me because as a listener, I perceive that, especially as it relates to you and Jason. I really there were moments listening to the record where I was like, oh, I can't quite tell what's going on at the low end there. Like who's playing what role there. And so it's interesting that that's something that is in your mind while it's happening, because it comes across in the music. And the other is, the musicality of the players. I mean, it's a fine ensemble. It's a really good band. I mean, it must be an exciting privilege to know you have. It's almost like having a stock theater company. Like, what these people can do now and where to push them and how to push them and how they interact. It's something of a privilege in creative music, right? To be able to revisit the same people over time.
Yeah, I mean, I feel, of course, very grateful for that too, that we've, been together for 12 years now. Even when I was in high school, I didn't know what type of band. I didn't know I would really go jazz, because I was definitely listening to other kinds of music like punk rock music. But I always wanted to be in a band. I always wanted a band. And so, I feel like sometimes people are looking like, what's your next thing? What's your next thing? And it's like, yeah, I like doing other things, but I think there's something to be said for like having a band and like having a band sound. And, it also makes it makes rehearsing go smoother, because we know how we work, and, everyone is so busy. So it's like, we could do a really concentrated amount of time and get the stuff to where it needs to be, I think, a little bit quicker, because we're not kind of figuring each other out. And it's not like, oh, we can just, like, it's so comfortable that we know everything, it's not like that, but we can just get to work right away. I really value like a band sound, or like that notion of just being together and working together and traveling together and eating together and even going on a little vacation together, that we just like know each other's energy and vibe. I hope it translates into the music, at least.
Do you think you'd be able to articulate what it is that the cello allows you to do, maybe harmonically or rhythmically, that is, that is unique to the cello in a jazz context? Like, what does the cello allow for that a more standard or traditional jazz combo can't do?
I think it just allows for endless possibilities. Because it can have so many different roles. And I'm sure I try to explore as much as I can, but I'm sure there's other people that are exploring it in their own way, that there's no one path. Like, I feel like there's a lot of awesome cellists that are in this space, that are doing a lot of really awesome things in their own way and contributing in their own way. So I feel like there's just a lot of, it can function as a bass. It can double with a bass. It can be like a horn, like, on the horn, like if you have like a combo, it can be just, you have a trombone, you have a cello. It can be that type of function. It can comp, because it can play chords, Then you have the bow, and then you have arco. You have bow, and then you have pizzicato, and maybe you want to add some, electronics to it, or just preparations, like even a pencil or paper or clips or something like that. So I feel like there's so many possibilities, and every player is going to be so unique and different. And I think that's true of any instrument, but I would say that's definitely really special to the cello. So yeah, just lots of just different possibilities. And if you're transcribing and you're like getting influences by different instruments, that's language that you're bringing into it. There's just, I guess endless possibilities is what I would say. Lots of different options.
Before I ask you more about the new record, I'm curious about what was your seduction with the cello like? You know, when you met the cello, were you drawn to it? Did you have to be convinced by it? Was it love at first sight? You know, how would you describe your initial relationship with the cello and then how you became immersed in it?
Well, I mean, I was at my mom put me in this French immersion school when I was in fourth grade. And that's when everybody in the Montgomery County, Maryland was able to pick an instrument. I just remember like a lot of the girls were picking flute and violin, and I was definitely more of a tomboy at the time. And I remember me and this girl, Lena Mendez, were like, we're gonna play cello. I had never really heard the cello before. And so I was like, yeah, it looked cool. It was big. And I don't know why I had this idea because I was new to the school. So I was like, maybe if I pick this instrument, like I got picked on a lot. So I was like, maybe they would think I was cool. I don't know why I thought play the cello. Someone would think I was cool, because then it was just like, forever.
Aw.
If that thing is almost as big as you are, or is there a dead body in that case? You know, you just hear the endless jokes forever. But yeah, it wasn't like I heard someone play it that I can recall. For a long time, I really wanted to play the piano, and I just thought I thought Scott Joplin's The Entertainer, if I could play that piece, then everyone would think I was so cool. I don't know why I thought that, but when you're a kid, you have these weird things. So yeah, it wasn't anything like that. But I think playing in the orchestra, like playing with the other kids, up until that point, I like changed schools every year. So it's like, I think I just wanted to be a part of like a club or a thing or something, you know, or do something with other kids, because I think I felt just kind of by myself a lot. And so I think I like the fact that, oh my gosh, I can play with these other kids and make this bigger sound, or like, oh, if I play these notes on this page and they're playing these notes, we can make music, which I definitely did love. Like even when I was younger, like I was always really interested in music. And I think sometimes maybe that's why I really like collaboration, because I think I've always been into this idea of like, oh my gosh, if you do this thing and we do this thing and we work together, we can make this bigger thing. Like, I don't think I was at that age, you know, I wasn't thinking about collaboration, but essentially that's really what that was. And I think I liked my role in the ensemble too, the cello, that it was like the low sound, that it was like the underpinning, it was the glue, it was the carpet, it was like the thing kind of holding things together. I wasn't really like, I mean, I feel that way even now. It's like, I don't have to play the melody, you know, like I don't have to. I tried, like sometimes people say, oh, you should put yourself more into that space. So then I have done that. And I do like playing melody, but I was never like, I have to like be the first violin energy, I guess is what I'm getting at. I'm definitely more like a bass player energy for cello, you know, like I'm more like, I like being a part of, I don't know, helping things good or better, or just helping things solid. Or I think I just like that part of like being the glue, and then like maybe there's a moment where you pop out, but you're just kind of always there, like helping the sound be warm and round. And I'm so grateful I picked the cello, because like I said, I really didn't know all of its possibilities. And it was a little frustrating at the beginning trying to get a sound out of it. And yeah, you know, it's a big instrument. So then I'm carrying this thing. So then it was like, maybe I should have picked the violin or the flute. But I think I definitely made the right choice. Yeah.
It's really interesting to hear what you say there, because it ties so directly into the comment you made about the idea of being in a band. Like you always liked the idea of being in a band, and what a cool idea that was to you. And there's something bubbling in your comments that has to do with like teamwork or camaraderie, or knowing how to play your position and support other people. Like it's all of a part, like all of a piece together in there, and what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm playing armchair psychologist.
No.
While we're doing that, maybe while I'm in psychologist mode.
I guess I was thinking, what is it like? Teamwork makes the dream work. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. See, there you
but
go.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's like, it's in our lives too. It's like, man, if we just kind of could work together, we could accomplish so much more, or just, I don't know, be a better society. It's like, and you don't even have to do that much. It's just like even a little bit of listening, little bit of empathy go a long way. You know, I think about my husband, it's like, it's so awesome. We're in a team together. Like, to be in a team is that's so awesome that we can like figure out how to go through this path of life together, like figuring out things that are big and small or whatever, but just having like, not that you can't do things by yourself, but it's like it's nice to have that other input from other people. I think it's, especially if it's good input, it just makes things really better, I think.
Yeah. Could you tell me about the various ways that family and family history runs through this record? It seems like there's some very overt ways, like the use of photographs and things of that nature. But also, what were some of the experiences that you had? What brought the notion of family into this project?
It's interesting. It wasn't intentional with that either. My very first record, I had my friend Damon Locks do the art for that, and he's a really great musician and artist as well. It was interesting, the photo that he used, it kind of looked, it's not me, but it looks like me when I was in junior high school or something, and I'm running, and she's running. And then for my next record, I was trying to figure out what images do I want to use. I was starting to get closer with my paternal side of the family, particularly my grandmother and her sister, Aunt CC, or Sarah Green. And when I went and visited them in Wyoming, because my grandmother grew up in southwestern Wyoming, they were like one of like, I don't know, 4 Black families that grew up in this part of southwestern Wyoming. Her stepdad worked in the mines, and so that's why they were living there. But when I went to visit, the kids, so my grandma and her brothers and sisters, their siblings, still kept the house that their parents lived in. And in that house was just like basically like a museum of all these photos, like on the walls. It was like, and that's your great great grandmother and your great grandmother and your great. And I was like, whoa, like I never even thought I would know my father, let alone his family or that part of the family. I just was taking pictures of everything because I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like that you have this history, because unfortunately on my maternal side, we don't have that. Like I don't have those kinds of photos at all. And so it was just, and they were so beautiful. And also because it's Wyoming, I feel like you don't often think of Black people in Wyoming or Black people in the West like that. I just was, when I saw these photos, I was just like, I have to use them. Like my grandmother was a very fashionable woman. She loved, getting her hair done. She was just always put together. I'll just say that. She has this fur coat on in like Green River, Wyoming. It just looks so, the juxtaposition of that image was just, I don't know, to me it was just very striking. Yeah. So for Old New, I have that picture of her and the twin boys in there. And yeah, my bio dad is a twin. On the cover, I have the two of them walking this dog, because it's just, again, it's just an image that I just don't see regularly of just, I don't know, 2 Black boys just walking their dog in Wyoming. Like maybe that exists a bunch somewhere, but I don't know. I hadn't seen that. So I was like,
I love that.
You know what? I want these pictures to be seen. They're so beautiful, and I want them to kind of live on. So I kind of had that idea with the second record. And then for the third one, I had my husband do the artwork. And it was interesting because I felt like that it was in conversation, I guess, with the first record, just more like drawings and not photos. And so when I was thinking of this record, and just like I was packing some items and some photos, I came across those photo booth pictures, and I was like, man, I just love these. I love them so much. And just thinking about, again, how do these live on? I mean, it's not like Black people in photo booth pictures people haven't seen, but for me, it's like, who do I give these to? I don't have children, so I'm just like, how do they live on? How do I keep them? I don't know. For me, they're beautiful, and I just want other people to see them. And so that's when I thought, oh, it'd be cool to have them on the record. And I was like, oh, that's kind of in conversation with the second album. Yeah, that's just kind of what the thought process was. And the picture on the vinyl or on the CD is my grandmother and her sister back to back. And I just love that image. They just went in to do a photo shoot just for fun in their like swimsuits. They wanted to do kind of like a Hollywood type of thing. And I just thought it was so cute. And it brought me a lot of joy. And I kept thinking like, oh, I would love to see that image kind of like twirling around on the vinyl while the music is playing. And then I thought too, there's an image of me that was taken by Tony Smith where I'm up against like a brick wall holding my cello that people have used a lot, and it just for promoting my like a concert or something. And so it's funny because how that came about was me. I was with two of my girlfriends and we were just, let's go to Tony's house and just take pictures. And I was like, go take pictures. Like, I don't know. I just not something I think of doing. Like I take selfies with my, with my friends or something, but they were like, yeah, let's go to his house and just take pictures. And I was like, okay. And she's like, yeah, bring your cello. I was like, okay. It was kind of like that picture came about as the picture, I think, with my grandma and her sister came about. They were just like, yeah, let's just have fun and take photos. So I think I like things to have all connections or just meaning, so.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I could say that that's kind of in conversation with another photo that I have of myself, where it was just a photo shoot that I did not know would have so many legs. Like it's funny how this photo from 2015 is still being used.
Oh, it's really interesting because when you point to some of the specific examples, like the photo of the two boys with the dog, or your grandmother and your aunt doing the swimsuit photos, there are all these little moments that feel really unencumbered.
Yeah.
The weight of the world's not there. There's no concerns there. It's just people living in a very unencumbered way. I think a lot of times we don't get images of Black people just living lives in a way where they're not somehow, the context of the photo isn't about, it's not weighted with things that maybe they don't deserve to carry in every photo that exists of them.
Exactly. And I think that's the joy part. That's just, they're just walking a dog, they're just cute girls and taking this photo. They're just, exactly. And yeah, sometimes I think that's a social injustice that we can't just have more moments like that. Like, can't we just we're just hanging out like anybody else?
Right.
And yeah, and that they were doing, that these are old pictures of people just hanging out in the 50s or 60s or maybe even 40s, because they're 10 years apart. Actually, the sisters are 10 years apart. I think one's 31 and the other one's 21 in that picture. But yeah, that they're just, yeah, I think that would have probably been like 1956 or something like that.
Yeah, that's even more interesting, right? Because it's a time that we think of being so tumultuous in the Black experience. And it's like some people they had days where they were just living life.
Yeah, I mean,
that's beautiful.
Yeah, and my grandma would tell me, she's like, I would ask her, like, what was it like living in Wyoming? There's not a lot of Black people there. Like, what was racism like? She was like, baby, she didn't feel like she really experienced it until white Southerners came up to work in the mines, and then they would use some language, but then she said everybody would just beat them up because it's like, what, we don't, they just didn't. She climbed trees. She said it was very actually super diverse. Like she said, she's like, I grew up around Japanese people and Mexican people. She was like, there was a lot of different people because everybody just came to work in the mines. And then, yeah, I've visited a few times and I learned in Rock Springs, there was like a significant like Chinese community that worked there. It's sad. There was like a Rock Springs massacre that happened, but yeah, she said it wasn't really until I left. And she's like, when I went to Manhattan, Kansas, that's when I learned that, oh, I guess being Black and a dark skin was the problem. She's like, we were just riding horses and going to the movies and just, I don't know, climbing trees. That she always talks about how she was climbing trees.
It's great. Well, along those lines, could you tell me about the track A Ways for CC and CeCe?
Yeah. So I feel like I'm terrible with track names, but so as I already said, my grandmother's sister is Sarah Green, but she goes by CC, so I call her Aunt CC. In the pandemic, I became my grandmother's caregiver, it was a lot, but it was also, when I look back on it, I just realized how super blessed and lucky I was to have that experience and have that time with her, even though a lot of that, in that time, she had Alzheimer's, so it was, yeah, I'm sad that I didn't get more years of her being coherent, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. I would kind of like reach out to Aunt CeCe, was like, if you ever need anything, just reach out to me. Like, as far as like, there was just moments I was like, I don't know what to do. It's like, okay, I need to get a family lawyer. I need to deal with all this stuff. Like, and figuring out how to find a home for her. And, it's a pandemic, so it's not like I could just take her to the hospital and I go with her too. And I couldn't get a geriatric doctor forever. Like, it was just a lot. And so I would talk to her a lot just about like, I just needed her help. And so going back, there was a gentleman that used to come to the Fred Anderson's Velvet Lounge in Chicago all the time. He would go to all the jazz sets, but his name was Clarence James, but he went by CeCe. So for a long time, CeCe, that name or that sound of that name was him. from, like when I first met him, probably in like 2002 until he passed in April of 2018. But he'd always be so encouraging. And I would go to his house in Hyde Park in Chicago, south side of Chicago, and he would play just a bunch of jazz because I just was still learning about this spectrum of the jazz music, like he hung with, all the guys in the art ensemble, and he knew, I'm not sure if he met Threadgill or they knew each other somehow, it's just like he was just always went to the sets. So he kind of just knew all these people, and he would be like, oh, you should check this out. You should check this out. You should check this out. Or I remember us watching that, can't remember what it's called, but that Cecil Taylor film that's, all white, and he's playing, watching that together, watching Sun Ra film together, he would always be like, check this out. He was just always supportive, because I think for a while there, I was just like, I don't know if I'm on the right path. I don't know what I'm doing. And he just like, just keep going. And he'd always be, play loud. He would always just say, just play loud. But yeah, so it's like, he was CeCe to me. And so when I was thinking about it and naming these tunes, I was like, oh, wow, I never thought that while CeCe, he left, he transitioned, but the creator put another CeCe in my life. It's just my aunt CeCe. And I don't know, it's like I just didn't make the connection really until I was just thinking about it last year. Like, wow, like even though that CeCe is gone, I have my aunt CeCe. And so that's why and that's how they both spelled their other name, their AKAs or their nicknames, I guess. And so a ways, it's like there's different ways. I'm pretty bad with names, but you have the two letter C's and then you have the C's.
When you were talking about CeCe, the musical mentor, not your aunt, the musical mentor, it reminded me that I wanted to ask you about your journey into jazz, because it does seem like it's a very deliberate, specific motion towards this music versus where you came from or where your studies were. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, like what caused you to walk down that road?
Well, I didn't intentionally think like, oh, I'm going to play free jazz now. I do feel like, again, it was kind of organic as far as like, I was trying to learn standards and tunes, and I feel like I didn't find a lot of people in Chicago at that time that were interested in doing that. It was very much like, I feel like I played in groups that if you did a quote, which you're always like, oh, you should throw a quote in there, they would like musically bomb you on the stage. So I was like, okay. I don't even know a lot of quotes I didn't know a lot of licks and quotes at that time anyway. So I was like, okay, I won't do that. And then it was like being a part of the AACM or just, being around those musicians and then eventually joining. It was very much like find your own voice and create your own sound and do your own thing and just very like create your own thing. And which was cool. I mean, I guess it helps you to develop your own language or gave me, even though I was like, I still don't really know what I'm doing, but encouraging me to just still try to figure it out. And sometimes I do wish I had done a little bit more of that tune stuff, but I mean, I still work on stuff now. It's not like I don't do it at all. And I think it's funny because some people were like, oh, you improvise in a very free way, but you write very melodic stuff. So it's like, I guess it's all kind of in there somehow, where in my own way it's coming out. But yeah, I thought that I would probably play tunes like, I was always like, oh, like to go to a jam session. But I think just because I kind of fell in with this AACM crowd, then I didn't do that so much. And then I was just like learning from the different, and I just didn't even think about it then. I mean, I really feel so blessed with my path because it wasn't something that I like totally set out. It just kind of happened. But it's like, oh yeah, I guess I'm playing with Nicole Mitchell Black Earth Ensemble, so I'm learning how she composes, or I'm playing with Mike Reed, I'm learning how she composes, or I'm playing with Dee Alexander, I'm seeing how she composes, playing with Douglas, I eventually am playing with Anthony Braxton or with Roscoe, and I'm seeing how they put things together. Or even, I mean, I think about even people like just other musicians in Chicago. I'm playing with Keith Jackson, or I'm seeing just like, oh, how they're leading bands, how they're booking tours, how they're, dealing with lots of different things. I think I also just really liked it because it was just open. I feel like when I was starting out, people would just really vibe me and be like, oh, you don't know Jess Langus. And I'm like, well, I do play the cello and that's not like a part of our regular training. So I'm here and I'm curious. Let's just move from there. And I feel like, again, the folks in this AACM world were definitely more like invited. Like they were just like, come on, let me just, you'll hear it. And I'm just like, what will I hear? So, but they were just, I think they just had faith in me and just were like, maybe some idea I had didn't come, I wasn't super confident about it, but they're like, but you have ideas and what you're doing is not wrong. Maybe you want to make a different choice another time, but it sounds fine. Maybe, like I said, like maybe you want to be more confident, more strong with the idea, but you're hearing something and to just go with that. And so, yeah, I felt welcomed. And like I said, I always wanted to play in a band. And so this was an opportunity for me to play in bands now. Like I'm getting asked to play in lots of different projects in Chicago. And that definitely was a dream and has been a dream. And now I realize I have to kind of like be more mindful just because of time, and I can't do, time and energy. I don't have the same energy I did when I was in my 20s to play in all these different bands, but I still am like, oh yeah, that's cool. I want to try that. Oh yeah, that's cool. Oh, these people are great. I like playing in bands and projects and that type of thing. So yeah.
How do you, if at all, how do you carry yourself differently when you're a leader versus when you're a side person? And what does being in someone else's band, what does that ask of you that leading doesn't? Because I would think that leading has its own, maybe somewhat obvious responsibilities, but it's slightly less clear to me what the responsibilities are of being a side person.
Well, I will say, I think to be a good leader, it's helpful to be a side person at some point or be a good side person. I feel like I like to believe that I'm a good band leader because I have been a side person for so long, and there's been things that I'm like, I would do that differently, or how I want to be treated or whatever. And so I try to do that when I'm band leading. I feel like sometimes I can be a little bit more relaxed when I'm a side person because I'm not thinking about, as my friend Dee Alexander would say, 11 things. I'm just thinking about like, how can I be the most supportive person in this? I mean, not more supportive than anyone else in the ensemble. I mean, but just to be the most supportive that I can be in this ensemble. Like, how can I just bring it to wherever it needs to go, whenever we're playing or recording or whatever? So that's just like my focus of like, yeah, and usually I'm playing with my friends and I'm just like, yeah, I want to like, I believe in my friend, whoever it is, like it's Angelica Nishit or maybe it's Tomas Fujiwara. And I'm like, yeah, they're badass and I want this to be badass. So I'm going to try and be as like supportive as I can be, and I can just focus on that. I think in my own projects, I tried to think about that, but you're also thinking about like, is everyone comfortable? And, did I write the charts? Are the charts clear enough for everybody? And, there's just like a lot of other important noise that's kind of going on that I'm still like, okay, I need to also just focus on the music, which I do, but it's just like there's a little bit more there's some of that taking up space in my brain as well of like, I want to make sure, for example, the tour schedule is comfortable and that we don't have too many super early mornings so that, we have enough time to get there and eat. And, it's like there's all these things that you want to consider that also is just taking up mental space. Also, I feel like I don't know, like with this music that I'm writing, I would say the last 2 records, it's like, I think in my first 2 records, I was like, oh, I need to show that the cello is a vital voice in this jazz music, even though, you have wonderful players like Eric Friedlander and Deirdre Murray and Akua Dixon. They've been doing it. It's not like it hasn't, but I feel like it's still not a total thing. So it's like, I feel like I still want to show that this is a vital voice in this space. So I felt like, oh, I'm going to write a blues and I'm going to write all these, like, oh, I need to show this kind of a tune or that kind of a tune. And I feel like the last 2 records, I was like, you know what? I want to write in keys that are comfortable for me so I can really make use of my open strings. And maybe that's something you kind of going back to your first question. I guess I'm also learning to write better for myself, even like horns are in B flat or whatever. And it's like, so I'm like, oh, I got to write pieces in B flat. It's like, no, I'm not, they're not necessarily thinking like, oh, I'm going to write the pieces in the key of D or C because to me, like this cello. It's like, no, they're writing in the keys that are comfortable for them. Why shouldn't I do that for myself? And so I think I did that more starting with 3+3 and then kept that idea in mind for dance skip hop. And so that way I can I can also just not be worried about like, oh, I'm playing, why'd you write this in 5 flats? Like, let's just, write music that you can just really, as my great cello teacher I used to have in undergrad, Miss Elsing would say, just sing, kind of like CeCe's Play Loud, but she would say, just go out there and sing,
You sort of did the segue for me. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your experience with educational institutions, both as a student and a teacher. What's your honest read on what those environments are and are not good for?
I mean, because this is a while ago now. Gosh, I guess I did my defense like 10 years ago, 2016. That's crazy.
It's crazy that 2016 is that long ago. I can't even really dimensionalize that.
Yeah. I definitely felt like, for example, I wanted to do my thesis on Abdul Wadud and my advisor was like, who's that? And I was like, oh no. And then, I think for me, it wasn't the right institution. Yeah, they were just very much stuck in like a certain realm of jazz. And I remember I had various professors that were like, do you even listen to jazz? And I was like, what? Like, I don't know. And then I realized maybe my listening isn't a specific sound world within jazz, but yeah, I listen to jazz. I just thought that was such a weird question. And then, yeah, it was kind of like, why don't you write about how to play like John Coltrane on the cello? And I was like, I don't want to do that. So the compromise we had was like, I did like transcriptions throughout the years and just talked about the bow and how you might phrase some of those transcriptions on the cello to sound more like that specific era. I don't know how successful that was, but that's what I ended up doing. But it was just very like not open to, I think, who I was, or I don't feel like took advantage of who I was or what I could, about the endless possibilities. I think that's what I feel like. It didn't take advantage of that. And it was definitely one of those cases of like, yeah, you don't listen to jazz. It's like, okay, but again, I'm here, I'm signed up, I'm taking the classes because I want to know. And because clearly I feel like there's stuff I don't know. So why don't you just teach me instead of like the vibe? So I felt like there was a vibe there. For my master's, I did it in classical cello. I think I did tell my teacher, like, yeah, I definitely want to play jazz. And I know he couldn't totally help me, not because he wasn't, just because that's not his sound world. He was just definitely a classical player and a very talented one. But I think that was just a challenge for me because, I don't know, I came to studying cello to be professional kind of late. And so I just remember a lot of times it was like, well, I had that trouble when I was 12 and I don't have that. And it's like, well, that doesn't help me now. And then, for undergrad, Miss Elsing, she was, very helpful to like getting me to learn technique on the instrument because I just really was quote unquote like behind as far as like, not even really have a grasp of fourth position, which typically if you're going to be a cellist, you're going to know that before you go to undergrad. I guess I gained stuff at every place, but I was kind of always like, undergrad because I was just so not as experienced as definitely people in my studio. I just had a lot to learn. So I was just really like, I don't know, just studying a lot. Cause I mean, we had people from Manhattan and Juilliard and Curtis and then B. It was kind of wild and very challenging, but also awesome. I learned a lot about the cello. I feel like just listening to my peers and just just learning the repertoire because hadn't heard like Beethoven sonatas before. I knew the Bach suites, but there was a lot of cello repertoire I was not familiar with. So that was really good training. Perhaps I was just kind of a challenging student to teach because I still don't know now if maybe at Berkeley, I think Eugene Friesen is still teaching there cello. Maybe Mike Block is there, but there's still not a lot of institutions that have if you want to be a jazz cello major, where do you go? So
Yeah.
I can't always fault the institution. It's kind of like, it would have been nice if there were, especially with my doctoral program, if they, like I said, if they had been more open, because clearly I was trying to figure something out. But I feel like with my own teaching, or even when I was like a middle school, high school orchestra director at the University of Chicago Laboratory Schools for my 8 years, I tried to be the orchestra teacher I always wished I had. And so I made sure that like my students, even when they were fifth graders, they knew like Abdul Wadud and they knew Pablo Casals, like I tried to like arrange stuff for them, or I tried to be the teacher that I wished that I had. I feel like I try to be that person in any teaching situation. Like, what would I wish I had known? And I'm sure, maybe that student will be like, oh, well, I wish you had told us this stuff. But that's kind of how I approach it. It's like, I want to share with them real stuff and make sure that they know not just this Western stuff, but, this Black stuff that's happening or this other stuff that's happening. Because it's often the music they're kind of hearing anyway. So it's like, hopefully that answered your question.
In education, or maybe specifically in your work with the Chicago Jazz String Summit, how do you think about issues around access to the opportunity as the participants, as the musicians, like making the educational opportunities and the performance opportunities available? How do you reach people to participate?
We try to have, CJSS wants to highlight particularly violin, viola, and cello players. So sometimes I get like guitar, bass players that are interested, but they've traditionally been in jazz contexts or improvising contexts. So that's why I focus on the orchestral strings, but particularly the violin, viola, cello player. So I try to look for individuals that are improvisers and that write their own material. So there are a lot of great ensembles out there, but it's like, and I love me some Earth, Wind, and Fire, but that's not what this is for. You know what I mean? Or it's not even for like, if you're going to do a cover or something like that, then maybe you're doing a cover of a Ginger Swap tune or a Stuff Smith composition, or even a Deirdre Murray piece or something like that. Because it's just not, again, going back to those jam sessions, it's like whenever anyone calls anything, it's like, it'd be like a Miles Davis tune or a John Coltrane tune or a Wayne Shorter tune. And those are great compositions, but it's like, it's never something by a string player, for example. So I was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if these string players write really great compositions? And what if you go and you call a Zach Brock tune or maybe a Sarah Caswell tune, something like that, or whoever, Chris Hoffman, maybe there's a piece of his that you like. And jazz, for me, it's music where improvisation is like a huge part of it. So sometimes it's a little bit of more experimental edge. And I also wanted to make sure that that's offered or displayed, because I feel like there are a lot of string festivals where you have fiddling and bluegrass and those types of music, and those are great. It's nothing against that. But I was like, well, where's the space for us, like, not weirdos, but like, like us more like avant-garde, where's the space for that? And so that's really where I'm coming from for that. So it's violin, viola, cello, writing your own original music, you're leading the ensemble. Yeah, maybe you're a little bit left of center, or maybe you're a little bit more straight ahead or something like that. But improvisation is definitely a key element to it. And then I also added strings of diaspora because I was like, oh yeah, there's awesome Gaiagan players out there, or erhu, or koto, or, I want to maybe have space for that too as much as I can. And then I try to make sure that I have like a Chicago, because it's in Chicago, so have like Chicago or someone from the region at least on every thing, because there's a lot more players, for example, in New York, and I don't want it to be like all of a sudden it's like a New York centered, or a lot of New York musicians that are playing in Chicago, because I want to still have Chicago people doing it.
Thank you for tuning into the Tonearm. If you enjoyed this conversation, check out the over 300 episodes available in our free archive at thetonearm.com. While you're there, join our mailing list or consider becoming a paid supporter. The Tonearm is executive produced and hosted by me, Lawrence Purrier. We're produced and marketed by Michael Donaldson. Editing and sound design is by Terry Grant, and our theme music is by Birdie, spelled B-U-R-D-Y. Thank you for listening, be safe, and stay in touch.
After listening to this episode, head to thetonearm.com, our online journal covering unexpected music and culture.
Right now on the Tonearm, you'll find features on Tangerine Dream pioneer Peter Baumann, Hudson Valley ambient experimenters Ben Seriton and John Thayer, Gavin Miller of electronic project Worried About Satan, piano-embracing club DJ David August, and so much more. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe to our email newsletter, Talk of the Tonearm.
That's thetonearm.com. The Tonearm, putting a needle on the cultural wax.